Hello, good morning to all, or good afternoon. I don't know exactly what time is it in Beijing. So I will speak to you about the European Union and coronavirus crisis. I am Giulio Salerno. I am full professor in public law in Macerata University in Italy. And in the same time, I am director of Institute for the Study of Journalism, Federalism, and Self-Government in the National Research Council of Italy. The object of my paper is the evolution of the European Union approach to coronavirus crisis, and I will explain to you that in the EU there were two different approaches. The first approach to pandemic was the emergency support to member states, MB. But in the future, the EU approach will be changed. And especially EU will act with temporary measures and structured interventions for economic and health resilience at both European and member state level. Initially, about the EU emergency support to the member state, the widespread opinion, the main opinion, was that an extraordinary crisis like as coronavirus needed unprecedented measures at both national and EU level. And so EU had essentially two targets. The first target was containing spread of coronavirus by supporting national health systems. And the second target was countering socioeconomic impacts of pandemic by supporting member states' policies. About health impact, EU Commission, that is the executive institution of European Union, adopted many measures, providing medical guidance for member states, funding EU emergency support instrument. It is an important instrument in order to support the state against the emergency and the crisis of health. Elaborating recommendations to member states on testing strategies, aiding the production and the availability of personal protective equipment in the member states, and issuing guidelines for border management measures to protect health, to ensure availability of goods and essential services, to guarantee free movement of workers in the healthcare among the member states. And about the economic and social impacts, the European Central Bank acted by means of the pandemic emergency purchase program. It is a temporary purchase of public and private securities. This new instrument was applied in a large amount. Then the second instrument was the new temporary rules about the state aids to companies. In this way, member states' governments can provide liquidity to companies in order to support citizens and save jobs. And this new instrument was applied. Third, the activation of general escape clause. That is an important clause in the European fiscal framework, and the goal of this clause is to allow maximum flexibility to budgetary rules of the member states in order to support healthcare systems and business and to secure jobs during the crisis. This new instrument was applied. For example, GDP deficit ratios in the member states are increased, very, very large measures. There were new financial assistance instruments from EU to member states. An example, the new SURE, that is a specific program. The name is Support to Mitigate Unemployment Risks in Emergency. This is financial assistance by means of loans granted on favorable terms from EU to member states of up to 100 billion in total to address sudden increases in public expenditures to preserve employment. And this new instrument was applied. 81 billion were given to 15 member states. And then the European Stability Mechanism, MES, that is a fund planned for asymmetrical crisis. It was applied 10 years ago, for example, for the crisis in Greece, has been extended also to member states' expenses for health measures. This extension is available, but it's not used by the member states of the European state. In the second phase, European Union will act towards a more resilient EU. There is a lesson from experience. So we need more coordination at EU level, more resilient economic systems, more resilient health national systems, and especially better preparation for future crises. In this new approach, there are two pillars. The first pillar is the recovery plan, and in the 10th of November, European Council and the European Parliament agreed about this recovery plan, but there are some problems about the conditionality, especially about the rule of law that will be applied to give these funds. And the second instrument is the European Health Union. And the 11th of November, a European Commission presented a proposal for this new European Health Union. About the economic strategy, there will be a recovery plan that is a package for the recovery and resiliency of all the member states in the Union. And in the recovery plan, there are two elements. The first element is a long-term strategy. There will be 1,800 billion in the new EU budget for the next 8 years. And then a temporary instrument that is especially designed to boost the recovery of the member states. The name is Next Generation EU Plan. That is especially loans and grants to member states in order to boost economic recovery for green, for digital, for modernization, especially in the fields of research and innovation. This Next Generation EU Plan will be activated in the next year, but the work is in progress. And especially 750 billion will be raised by the EU Commission on the capital market and will be given to the member states. About the European Health Union, it's important to say that it will be created without modifying European treaties, and so it will be easier. European Health Union is within the boundaries of the treaty of the functionament of the European Union, especially about the Article 168 and Article 114. But it's important to say that the European Health Union will be useful not only for crisis management, because there will be provided also next initiative for pharmaceutical strategy or for the cancer plan. But it is important because the European Health Union will be a new approach of EU health policies, that is from an emergency measures to a structured system. There will be two goals: increase increase the health security framework by means of new European rules and to strengthen EU agencies that are European institutions. About the innovation, the European rules, the goals are to harmonize European, national, and regional response to the crisis of health. These plans will be stress tested and audited regularly by the Commission and the European agencies. And the second goal is to set up an European emergency system, and the new European framework will be able to increase coordination and rapid action to develop, stockpile, and procure the equipment needed to face the crisis. About the innovation of the European institution, it is provided new function of the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, new functions for the European Medicine Agency, and also a new authority, the Health Emergency Response Authority, in order to coordinate and activate emergency response by the end of the next year. In conclusion, I would like to remember you some words of Stella Kyriadis, that is, who is the European Commissioner for Health and Food Safety. She said that European Health Union will be a significant change for the capacity to respond collectively. It is all about preparing for a phasing up to common health threats together as a union. We need to do this in order to meet the expectation of our citizens. So we know that the coronavirus crisis is producing now serious effects about health, economic, and social conditions, and I think that changing European approach is a crucial opportunity for all us. Thank you.
那么我们下一位发言人就是意大利国家研究委员会国际法律问题研究所科研部主任马切里教授。Professor Marcelli, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
15 minutes.
Yes, I am very pleased to be here with you in this very important conference about COVID and the situation we are facing now in all the world. It's a worldwide situation. I think that COVID pandemic represents a difficult challenge for the whole of humankind. It is a new virus which presents many still unknown characteristics and requires a response articulated on different levels: social distancing, protection means, therapeutic means, and the vaccine. So it is a situation in Italy. Yesterday, we arrived at 50,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic in our country. And the situation is still rather difficult. It continues to rage, this pandemic, and all over the world is the same situation. I think that we have to realize that this pandemic is connected also with other global, worldwide problems, such as environmental protection. We know that the virus derived from the so-called zoonosis. This is the passage from animals to humans due to the destruction of natural habitats by the development of the economy. And also there is a connection between the pandemic and the problem of social justice, because there is clearly a situation of inequality in the access to the health, to the right of health. At least in capitalistic countries like Italy or United States or other countries, there is a problem of access to the means, to safeguard the health in such a situation of pandemic, which has devastating social and economic consequences. So the first thing we have to say is that this pandemic requires a coordinated and cooperative response by the whole of the world, for the whole of international communities, by all countries together. It is important to dictate international norms concerning COVID. We know that, for instance, the approach adopted by China was a successful one because it was based on lockdown, so-called lockdown. And also in Italy, we had a lockdown in the months from March until May of this year. And now, not in all the country, but in some region, we have a lockdown again. So social distancing for a while, it is not, of course, for forever, but for a while it is necessary. We learned that this is necessary to have this kind of lockdown. But we need international norms on this field, because if one country takes one way and another country takes another way, the virus circulates. And if I succeed in blocking the virus in Italy and not in the United States or in Brazil, the threat of the virus is still there. And so we need to have a international approach. We need international norms dictated at international level, which countries should apply in uniform way in order to contain the diffusion of the virus. Every country should follow a very cautious path, taking into consideration the undeniable fact that social distancing and the adoption of protective means constitute an important tool against the diffusion of the virus. This is also a principle, which is the principle of the precautionary principle, which is contained in international law. For instance, it is contained in the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development of 1992, and it represents nowadays a norm which is applied at international level and at national level. Precautionary approach means that if there is a danger in certain solution, the less dangerous solution should be adopted. This approach is particularly important in a case like that of COVID, because we don't know, researchers don't know yet which are precisely the characteristics of this virus, how it is transmitted from one human being until another. We have a series of hypotheses, but still there is a lot of research to be done. And also in the field of research, we should adopt the most possible cooperation among different countries, among different equipes of research. And we know that the scientific communities adopted such a cooperative approach. It affirmed the need to have such a cooperative approach, but unfortunately, this is not yet the situation. There is still a competition among the countries which is against the reason of cooperation which is needed in such a situation. So I pass to the third slide of my intervention. Importance of international cooperation. It is impossible to defeat the virus without deep changes in society at national and international level. This is another issue we should pay attention to. Historically, pandemics bring changes. We know that, for instance, the big pandemic in Europe in the 14th century, the diffusion of the pest brought about important changes in society and in economy. And this, of course, will be also the case with COVID pandemic. But which kind of changes are we going to see? They could be negative changes or positive changes. It depends on which kind of election will be done by the different countries, and there is a debate, of course. There is also a conflict, a social conflict, a social debate in which changes bring about. For instance, in our country, it appears particularly important to reverse the neoliberal flood which submerged many states in the world, weakening or destroying their health systems. In Italy, we see that very clearly. Thousands of places in the hospital have been cancelled due to this neoliberal policy in the last 10 or 20 years, and now we pay the price for that because there is no the possibility to give the necessary assistance to COVID to people which are suffering now this tremendous illness of COVID. Necessary changes in international level imply strengthening international cooperation, reducing the leverage and power of big pharmaceutical industries, and fighting the existing disparities in wealth and health among different countries and regions of the world. The key role of WHO should be enhanced fully. We appreciate very much the position of China concerning WHO, which always stressed the need to reinforce this important United Nations agency, which is the one in charge for the problem of health, and which is going to have ever growing and more important role in this situation, because unfortunately pandemics will be among us for a long while, and we need to know how to fight pandemics, and WHO is the necessary place in order to coordinate the policies, coordinate the norms, and enhance international cooperation in this vital field of health. Now, we hope that the new United States President Biden will reverse the noxious path taken by Trump, and he already announced the United States will be again inside the WHO, and this, I think, it's a very positive thing. Another key point is the production and distribution of the vaccine. We know that there are several attempts now in the world. The first thing to be noted is that unfortunately there is a competitive approach to vaccine. It's like a race to arrive the first, and this is not very good. It should be a cooperation among the countries, among the enterprises, among the researchers. This is not yet the case, and WHO is important also in order to foster to promote this cooperation in the field of vaccine, which of course is the vital issue to be solved, how to produce a vaccine. The different competitive approach don't at all respect the need to join the efforts, and a great part of the world population could be excluded from access to vaccine. It is very important that the obstacle posed by protection of intellectual property in this case should be overcome, because it could hamper the access to vaccine and therapeutic means. There are fortunately positions which call for universal access to vaccine. I know that, for instance, Xi Jinping, the president of China, called for an universal access to the vaccine, the Pope called for universal access to the vaccine, I think that this is important struggle to fight in order to allow to all the people of the world to have access to this vaccine. And to this end, we have to promote international cooperation in this very important field. So, finally, I think that what the situation we are facing, I said it's a difficult situation. You know it because also China passed through a very critical period. Now I know the situation of China is much better. Is much better due to the choices which were done, which were successful choices in all fields. I hope that also other countries on the world can be part on the same road, on the same path, in order to gain finally an exit from this dangerous situation of COVID, which brings about a lot of negative consequences on health of people, of course, but also on the economies, because there is, of course, a reduction of the economies, particularly in some services, like, for instance, tourism or services or this kind of services which require a direct contact among people. And so there is the need to intervene in order to support these sectors. The last lines is dedicated to the shared future of humankind, which was also in the title of my intervention. As you know, the shared future of humankind is a doctrine which was adopted by the Chinese Communist of the Communist Party of China by the 18th Congress held in November 2012, which is tightly connected with Belt and Road program, which cannot be interpreted merely as an economic undertaking, but presents many aspects of a social, political, and cultural nature. Yes, finally, I would like to stress the importance of such a doctrine, which is a doctrine which calls for a cooperation among countries in order to face the global problems. As I mentioned at the beginning of the intervention, there is not only the pandemic, there is not only COVID, there are also other worldwide problems which are for many aspects connected with COVID, like the problem of environmental protection, the problem of social justice. On all these problems, we need a cooperation among all the countries. We need to strengthen the organization like WHO, which are dedicated to promote this cooperation in the different fields like health, but also there are other organizations for the environment and so on. And I think the shared future doctrine adopted by China is a very important step in order to reach this international cooperation. And I hope that similar doctrine can be adopted by all the countries in order to join our efforts for solve our common problems. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's do it. So good morning, and I do thank CAST for the invitation, in particular Professor Mo Zhong and Professor Mao Xiaofei. Also, a special word must be given to Professor Wang Jin, also commentator here, and to Professor Shen Zhuan, the chairperson of this roundtable. My speech, brief speech, 15 minutes maximum according to the rules I was given, is on COVID-19 impact on the international legal and economic order and challenges for the university in general, but in particular for the one I'm ruling now as Vice Rector, University of Coimbra. We live in unique times of almost absolute uncertainty. Often closed at home, isolated from contact with family, friends, and colleagues. We can't even visit who took care of us when babies and children. It seems that we can only demonstrate our humanity when physically removed from the elder, strange world. But the so-called COVID-19 does not limit itself, however, to profoundly transform interhuman relations or to force deep reflection on the limits of human nature and the relationship with God. Democratic plague, without geographical or socio-economic borders, this coronavirus causes powerful changes in the state-society relationship and in the geostrategic order in which we have been living in. We are facing the most serious threat to our freedoms, democratic values, and world peace. In brief words, let us see the main reasons for our concern. The European Union, on which Portugal depends so much, is at serious risk of extinction. The clear inability of leaders to respond to the demands of the moment causes citizens from most member states a sense of injustice and worthlessness in community building. And the famous bazooka is proving too slow to arrive. Either Merkel solves this and stays in history, or the economic and monetary union will collapse. Particularly relevant danger when the rhetoric of world leaders seems to point to a revival of the Cold War climate, this time with China. And decisions like that of President Trump regarding World Health Organization accelerate the end of the era of multilateralism. Let's hope with the change of the presidency in the US, this can change. Layoff, bankruptcies, in short, social misery is the certainty of today and the following years. Fertile ground for demagogues, populists, and extremists that will soon come to take the reins of power if current political leaders do not demonstrate the necessary courage and sense of responsibility. This greatest crisis since the Great Depression justifies also a greater state intervention in society. Nationalization of companies considered being strategic, public control of more economic sectors, state heads backed by transitory regulations. In geostrategic terms, as I said, we are witnessing profound changes, calling into question the quality of democratic regime in several countries, or even the survival of international organizations of regional integration, such as the European Union. The EU is at a crucial moment, at a time of all or nothing. Either we deepen European integration, or the Union will languish until it implodes. We believe that there are 5 fundamental struggles that European political leaders must urgently have to face on. First one, economic, social, and territorial asymmetries. Second one, climate change. Third one, opening of commercial trade. Fourth one, migrations. And fifth one, digital revolution. If the leadership of the old continent do not know how to face the challenges just exposed, the implosion of the European dream is the most likely scenario. It is not a question of pessimism, but of knowing how to read the signals that European citizens are clearly transmitting to us. The dangers which threaten the survival of the EU, and that they are basically the resurgence of nationalisms, such as Brexit and Catalonia, and the growth of populisms and extremisms. In other words, only the strengthening of community ties with significant budgetary integration and the deepening of political integration mechanisms can save the EU from irrelevance or disappearance. In view of the increasing risks to democratic Western regimes, the public service mission performed by the university gains special relevance in building a just, free, and fraternal society, creating the main forum to fight some of the fundamental struggles we have alluded. First one, the university is and must be for excellence the vehicle that promotes equal opportunities. In this sense, to mitigate the economic, social, and territorial asymmetries that erode democracies necessarily implies a decisive bet on strong universities, schools of excellence in terms of technical knowledge, and exemplary platforms of integrity, transparency, and fight against corruption. The second one, without any radicalism, the university has the obligation to inspire other institutions in matters of environmental and climate sustainability, taking university managers based on scientific knowledge, courageous and increasingly urgent decisions, even if controversial. The third one, a space of tolerance, a free and respectful argumentative discussion. The university is therefore increasingly indispensable to the dialogue between civilizations, to the harmonious integration of migrants all over the world to peace in humanity. And the fourth one, the unstoppable digitalization in progress must necessarily be seen as an opportunity for the university to build a less unequal society with relevant contributions in terms of professional requalification and adaptation of the educational offer to new areas of knowledge, in the assumption, for us insurmountable, that the teaching matrix must be fundamentally faith-based, mainly for social inclusion reasons. The University of Coimbra must fulfill the responsibilities just described, and due to its history and its global vocation, such a mission must project itself to the world and not just be limited to the Portuguese reality. Thus, it is necessary, in an essentially abbreviated way, to describe the main challenges of the University of Coimbra on an international scale. As the oldest university, 730 years old, the University of Coimbra cannot fail to reflect in the international relations plan much of what is the Portuguese foreign policy, which is why we will highlight three fundamental vectors that end up for guiding the action of the current rectorates: Lusophone space, European Union, and People's Republic of China. First one, Lusophony. Despite the fact that we have to recognize that the reinforcement of the training offer in English constitutes a decisive bet for the recruitment of students in many parts of the world, and in order to reinforce the internationalization of the University of Coimbra, teaching in Portuguese is the institution's watermark, one of the 5 UNESCO universities, also because of the historical and cultural dimension. On the other hand, we are very proud of our number of Brazilian students, around 3,000, who come to us just because of our prestige and for the opportunity they have here to study in our language. Thus, the intensification of ties with Brazil will always be a priority. Linguistic and cultural ties, decisive influence in the organization of the legal system, and in this way, in the Brazilian economic and social structuring, impose the strategic bet on the internationalization of the University of Coimbra. That's why we celebrated a prestigious cooperation agreement with the Superior Council of the Public Ministry of Brazil, aimed at ensuring the training of Brazilian public ministry magistrates engaging the Faculty of Law and our Sino-Lusophone Academy, and also continue to bet on the renewal of agreements with prestigious universities and reinforcement of participation in relevant international networks with strong establishment in Brazil. We cannot fail to recall the strategic relevance of closing the framework cooperation agreement with the Ministry of Justice of East Timor, including the teaching of Portuguese and Timorese law to judicial magistrates and more public defenders. It is also worth mentioning the increased participation of the University of Coimbra in the non-governmental organization G7+, founded by our honoris causa, His Excellency President Xanana Guzmão, demonstrating that the University of Coimbra complies the social mission of contributing to the construction of the rule of law in all corners of the world. More recently, deepening of cooperation with countries such as Angola or Saint Tomé and Príncipe has also resulted in concrete agreements that are important for the strengthening of the University of Coimbra and Portugal relations with Portuguese-speaking Africa, especially for the training of magistrates in those countries on various topics such as language, law, medicine, forensics, or even at the engineering level. The strengthening of relations with the African countries with Portuguese as official language. In this context, also to remember the presence of His Excellency President Joaquim Chissano, another of our Doctor Honoris Causa, and President of the International Advisory Committee of the China-Africa Institute, at the official launch of the Sino-Lusophone Academy in June 2019, is in fact absolutely decisive for the University of Coimbra to be more and more a university that meets the most renowned educational institutions on the world and arouses the interests of the increasingly relevant states in the new global order, such as China. Our second vector is European Union. In the European context, we must talk about the ECTU, an European campus that was recently a joint winning application with 6 more prestigious European universities: Poitiers, Pavia, Salamanca, Iași, Turku, and Vienna. It is basically a European campus with the scope of increasing the ideal of European citizenship, also in the context of higher education of the old continent. More than the importance of the contribution of the community financing and the strengthening of student mobility, the success of this application represents being at the forefront of deepening European integration, a prestigious sign of the University of Coimbra and an important contribution to the survival of the important project of the Union. And finally, last but not least, China. Sino-Portuguese speaking relations are ancestral, and here it is necessary to highlight the historical role of the University of Coimbra, especially the Faculty of Law, in defining the law of so-called Macau Special Administrative Region. An essential player in today's global order, China must be considered as a strategic investment in the internationalization of the University of Coimbra, a link to the entire Portuguese-speaking world with 730 years of prestige. The University of Coimbra, by making a bet on Sino-Portuguese-speaking relations, has unique conditions to assume itself worldwide as a higher education institution reference. Thus, in addition to have one of the most dynamic Confucius Institute in the world, in June 2019, it was officially inaugurated the Sino-Lusophone Academy, with headquarters at Colégio da Trindade, one of the most beautiful places of our university. Through Sino-Lusophone Academy, the University of Coimbra has developed an impressive network of cooperation with the largest Chinese university institution, EU, Fudan, and have jointly created 2 Chinese study centers, one of them with Academy of Social Sciences, CAT, that I must consider probably one of our best partners, the best partner for sure. Besides holding several colloquia, symposia, workshops, short training courses, and to be the support of the exchange of researchers in various fields of knowledge, Sino-Lusophone Academy is soon preparing to launch publications in the commercial and corporate field, for instance, and implement truly structuring projects, in particular within the scope of arbitration, for the development of relations between China and the Portuguese-speaking world. In May 2020, University of Coimbra was one of the international partners, together with the National University of Singapore and University of Oxford, among others, that supported the creation of the University of Bank of China, an institution with which we have been outlining important projects, especially in the area of staff training. So, to conclude my intervention, in the year in which we celebrate the 730th anniversary, the University of Coimbra, with 25,000 students, 5,000 of whom are foreign students, is proud of its journey and of the present, allowing us to discover a sustainable and bright future, even in an increasingly global and competitive context. For that, we do believe that our partnership with CAS is of extreme importance. That's why I'm here, for also this symbolic reason, and we do have a future common. Thank you so much.
谢谢赵军教授。那么第3位发言人是香港中文大学法学院院长吴峰教授，有请。
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to join this very important symposium. Let me just share my PowerPoints with you. Here we are. All right. My topic is legal responses to BRI in times of COVID-19. When talking about legal responses to the Belt and Road Initiative, 3 questions need to be answered. The first one is there really a need for legal responses? The second question is, who should respond? And the third question is, which legal responses are required? In response to in regard to the first question, if there is a legal need for legal responses, the answer is quite obvious. Only the original 65 Belt and Road states covered half of the world population, 75% of the known world energy resources, and 40% of the global GDP. And that means that Belt and Road is a massive initiative which requires attention of the whole world. And it is, in fact, quite widely acknowledged that legal responses are required and are already in the making. Now, the second question is, who should respond? And those parties who should respond are all the Belt and Road stakeholders. Who are Belt and Road stakeholders? Well, first of all, China and Chinese parties. Second, all the Belt and Road countries and related stakeholders. But third, of course, also those countries which have not yet joined the Belt and Road Initiative. And lastly, international organizations and NGOs. To summarize, who should respond to Belt and Road? The answer is everybody. Now, I would like to give you some examples how and why everybody should respond. Let's talk about China first. Legal responses to Belt and Road from China, and China is the initiator, is the creator of Belt and Road, of course. Who has to respond from within China? First of all, the government. Second, semi and non-governmental organizations, for example, legal educational institutions, and that is widely acknowledged as well, business entities, and of course also the legal profession and other professions. Let's talk of some of these points in more detail. The government, what should the government do? First of all, the government, in order to support legal action related to Belt and Road, should identify and communicate clear Belt and Road goals. Why is that necessary? Well, if you talk about Belt and Road in the international context, very often you still see charts like these. You see the One Belt, One Road overland initiative, and then you have the Maritime Belt and Road Initiative. And that was the original idea of OBOR, of BRI, of Belt and Road. Since the launch of BRI, of course, the situation has changed completely. Originally, we had, and this comes from the official Chinese BRI website. Originally, BRI had 65 member states. Later, it was increased to 80. And in November 2020, the official website lists 143 Belt and Road states, including countries in South America, in Africa, in Europe. That means all over the world. So the original idea that BRI relates to OBOR and the Maritime Silk Road is no longer true. Belt and Road stands for China's outbound activities, and that must be acknowledged and that must be made clear. Of course, in 2015, a document was published which has identified 5 official cooperation priorities, but immediately different parties commented and tried to look for hidden goals. First of all, of course, there was the Can you hear me? Because can anybody tell me whether you hear me? Because I just got a message that I'm muted. I will just continue to talk. If you can hear me, can you do this? Good, thank you. First of all, parties have argued that China has started the Belt and Road Initiative to increase its geopolitical position. Others have argued that China has started the Belt and Road Initiative for economic reasons, to strengthen the domestic economy. And there was criticism that Belt and Road is just a one-way initiative from China into the Belt and Road countries, but not in the other direction. And all this has led to criticism, which can be summarized as follows. China always argues that Belt and Road will lead to a win-win situation, but parties have argued win-win just means double win for China. Then there's the argument of a debt trap diplomacy. I don't want to go into this here. Loans are given to Belt and Road countries. They cannot pay back, and that gives China power over these countries. There's also criticism that Belt and Road has become a burden for China because it has financial implications. And then there are, of course, security concerns because Belt and Road projects are in countries which are not stable and which have therefore led to major problems, security problems. President Xi Jinping has, of course, argued that Belt and Road is nothing of this. It is an open platform for cooperation, but the criticism remains, and this is the reason why the Chinese government needs to set clear Belt and Road goals to support legal action. Second, China also needs to respond to its own initiative by making the domestic legal system BRI compatible. And that means improvement of China's outbound legal regime, improvement of China's dispute settlement options. We need to keep in mind in this regard that there is no BRI law. There is no international BRI law, and there is no domestic BRI law. When you Google one of the main databases in China, you will find these very general rules which have been published by China, and this is really not real BRI law. So we need to consider whether we need real BRI law. Of course, China has set up 2 commercial tribunals in Shenzhen and in Xi'an. Originally, everybody thought these were BRI dispute settlement bodies, but the jurisdiction of these courts is not BRI specific. There are also the rules of the Supreme People's Courts in 2015, which provide guidance to people's courts in relation to conflicts, to private international law issues. Again, just guidance, not real law. Let's look at two more aspects. China, of course, should consider, or has to consider, whether it wants to and should lead legal developments in the BRI area. And first of all, this means to consider whether legal harmonization or unification in the BRI area is something which makes sense. That was a hot topic in the early BRI years, when everybody thought that BRI would be something like the European Union. But that, of course, is no longer the case. It is unrealistic to talk about harmonization and unification in light of the differences of the legal systems of BRI countries and the increasing number of BRI states. Let's take a last look at one more party from China, responses to BRI, law firms. I can't discuss everything. There's just too much involved here, but let's look at Chinese law firms. All the law firms, not only in China, but in the whole world, have started to get ready to get BRI business. And they have done so in the usual way. When developing a new legal product, you need to identify client needs, you need to organize your internal administration, you need to develop know-how, and so on. But the question is BRI expertise not a fake lawyering product? Because there is no BRI law. How can you present yourself as a BRI law firm? You should rather focus, I believe, on particular sectors, industry sectors, or particular BRI countries. There is no specific BRI expertise. We need to acknowledge this. Of course, legal responses to BRI are not only required from China and from within China, but also from the non-Chinese BRI countries. And I will rush you through this because we don't have time. There are issues about transparency and governance. There are issues about Chinese legal dominance in the BRI area, which potentially those BRI countries have to consider, and they have to take action. They need to see whether this is something which is acceptable. There are also legal responses required from the non-BRI countries. And the main question here, that I can only highlight this, is whether it makes sense to join BRI or to counter BRI. Is BRI something which, in my eyes, is very helpful, in particular in countries like Pakistan or Bangladesh, where nobody else wants to invest, but via BRI, investments are made, the economy is supported, and that is something good, and why not joining? But countries see this as a threat. Western countries see this as a threat, and we all know that action has been taken in order to counter China's increasing geopolitical power via their own plans, or the trade war initiated by President Trump was one of those tools, or poison pill tactics such as clauses inserted in the new NAFTA agreement. Just a quick look at the international organizations and NGOs. They also have to respond to BRI, and they did respond to BRI by setting up working groups and by considering whether model guidelines and other legal instruments have to be applied or can be applied to BRI. This brings me to my last question. What kind of legal BRI response is required? And there's a lot of discussion about this, in particular, whether, I've mentioned that already, whether BRI requires counter activities. What kind of response is required depends, of course, on the interests of the different parties. In my eyes, however, differing interests of the BRI stakeholders should not prevent constructive legal dealings between China, the other BRI countries, and also non-BRI countries. Cooperation is key, communication is key for success for all the related parties. And the last point I want to make is COVID-19, of course. This is the dominating theme nowadays. COVID-19 is affecting, and we have heard that before, BRI, of course, but COVID-19 will not stop BRI. The legal responses of the different stakeholders need to take place within the existing legal frameworks. And what needs to be considered in this regard is whether COVID-19 will strengthen China's geopolitical position even further, and how that affects the legal responses, actual and potential, of other BRI countries and of the non-BRI countries, but also of China itself. And with this, I wish to stop and thank you all for listening. If you want to have more information, I've discussed this topic in an article which was just published in the Transnational Law and Contemporary Problems. It's available online. You can just access it. So all the features are set out there. Thank you very much for listening. I'll stop here. Thanks. And
okay. Good morning to everybody. Do you hear me? Okay.
可以听到。
Today I want to share I want to share some ideas about COVID-19 epidemic and influence to the Belt and Road Initiative, and share some experience of Russian Federation. I prepare a small presentation and I try to share with my colleagues, but I think I have some technical problems with the presentation. I'll try it. Okay, I'll try it, but maybe some. Okay. And the topic of my speech is fighting corruption during the COVID-19 pandemic, experience of Russia. And it is honor to me to be a part of today's event that organized by the Chinese Academy of Social Science and International Institute of International Law. I tried to share my presentation, but I think it did not work correct. Sorry. Yes, it's a big problem with my presentation. I tried again, but maybe some.
You can share your screen. You can share your screen.
Okay. Yeah, I tried, but maybe some problems with the. Do you see my presentation?
It works. You can continue. Yeah.
Okay. I'm from the Institute of Legislation and Comparative Law under the government of Russian Federation. And the topic of my speech is fighting corruption during the COVID-19 pandemic, experience of Russia. And my presentation divides in 3 parts. And first of all, I want to make some introduction, then share with our colleagues some trends, and in the end of my presentation, to make some forecast about this phenomenon. And the problem of the current state of corruption and the extent of its impact on the lives of Russian citizens in the context of the new coronavirus infection pandemic caused by COVID-19 occupies a leading position in the rating of major social problems. So there have been and will continue to be significant changes in the life of our society. The philosophical approach to these existential changes allows us to conclude that corruption manifestations as sensuous things and without a pandemic are in constant evolution. In contrast, the prototype of corruption itself as a social-legal phenomenon remains unchanging, continues to exist. In the process of change, only properties of corruption, its constitutive characteristic and structure can become different. At the present, the pandemic changes are becoming a starting point for understanding and fixing corruption through new situations, moving science to penetrate the stable forms of the object corruption. And please look at my slide number 4. According to a survey made by Levada Center in August 2020, Russian people are worried about price increase, about 61%, poverty impoverishment of the majority of the population, about 39%, corruption, bribery, about 38%, inefficiency of many types of medical service, about 29%, and a sharp stratification between the poor and the rich, 28% of the Russian people, and crisis in the economy, production declined to 26%. According to the Russian legislation, the amount of bribe is divided for 4 parts. For example, we call them petty bribery, the amount less than 10,000 rubles, about 130 US$, or maybe 1,000 RMB. Then another amount is significant amount of bribe, about 25,000 rubles, about 329 US$, or 2,500 RMB. And the next one is large scale of bribe. It's about 150,000 rubles, 150,000 rubles, and about 1,074 US$, or maybe, or 10,000, 15,000 RMB. And the last one is, we call them the colossal size of bribe is over 1 million rubles, about 13,000 US$, or 100,000 RMB. And what we see, according to the statistic of our bodies, despite a slight decrease in the number of corruption crimes in the first quarter of 2020, on the contrary, of number of cases of bribery increased by 8.7 up to 4,000. Similarly, the number of large-scale bribes increased to almost 800. And the amount of briberies that appear in the materials of the criminal cases considered are still small, in particular for bribes and commercial bribery in 50,000 to 1 million rubles, only 885 cases. For example, in 2018, we have only 823 cases, and people were connected, and more than 1 million rubles bribery, the number of 189 people. And in particular to last year, it's about 150 people. And we see that slight decrease of the number of corruption crimes to the first quarter, but the number of cases of bribery increased by 8.7%, up to 470,000. Number of large-scale bribery increased almost 800. The amount of briberies appear in the materials are still small. And what this data shows us? This shows us some trends that appear in Russia in these difficult times. Unfortunately, corruption often thrives in crisis times, especially when the institutions and oversight are weak and public trust is low. The problem of public procurement, as you know, the most massive corruption revenue generated by public procurement, especially medical products, consumable tools, equipment, and so on. The next is the problem of distributing business assistance, trade in medical supplies, surges in demand and despite supply chains create shortages of opportunities for higher prices. The trade in medical counterfeit goods are becoming another area that generates corruption. And next one is medical assistance to citizens. Small-scale bribery is also a problem that has re-emerged in the context of the pandemic. For access to health services, bribery of law enforcement officials to evade quarantine. Now Russia in quarantine time, and for example, when I go to my office place, we need to wear mask. About 30% of my colleagues at home, they stay at home. And the cases of coronavirus, of COVID-19 in Russia these days are very high. For example, in Moscow, every day it's about 5 or maybe 6,000 cases. And next one is very important sphere, it's migrants. The activities of migrants, the life and employment of migrants sharply criminalized. They cannot back to their homes and they need to stay in Russia. And when they stay in our country, they maybe take part in some crimes. Some of these crimes may be connected with the corruption because they need as soon as possible back to their homes. They need to make some documents, to make some procedures, but now it's very difficult because of COVID-19 influence. And this threat of the people generated the development of corruption crime. And another one is like aggregation of the struggle for redistribution of property in connection with the alleged mass bankruptcy of enterprises. And last one is deterioration of the function of private business. As we know, the most impact of the COVID-19 are focused on the private business. A lot of private enterprises are closed, or they have no enough money to pay salary and to make their business as ordinary way. And during this crisis, the private sector faced increased corruption risk. And what we have in the forecast, I want to share some forecasts of this development of this time of crisis in this time. There is noticeable increase in corruption in terms of state orders related to the purchase of medical equipment, medicines, and consumables, and the distribution of budget subsidies to support small and medium-sized businesses. As I said, they need state support. Another process that is vulnerable to corruption in the near term is investment in the research and development of drugs and vaccinations against COVID-19. As you know, Russia prepared our own vaccine that named like Sputnik 5, and we hope that we start vaccination in the end of this year. As soon as immediate threat from the pandemic dissipates, many will accept an increased focus of the enormous amount of aid that individual and business received during the epidemic and crisis. Such approaches are increasing attention to high-profile manifestation of corruption. And in this difficult time, it is that the development of scientific views on corruption at present and in the future should be based on the recognition of the close connection between changes in corruption manifestation and the preservation of the stability of the extremes of corruption as a negative social phenomenon. And in this trend, we need a strong cooperation with our Chinese and foreign parties, especially in the development, maybe new legislation that regulated new phenomena that we can see in our ordinary life. And I think I'm finished on this because of time. Thank you for your attention. Сессия
我发言的题目是"一带一路"背景下中非投资争议的解决方式的一个分析。你们等一下，把幻灯片放一下。我们知道，在2018年的时候呢，习近平主席在那个中非合作论坛北京峰会上提出来呢，要建成一个中非命运共同体。那么在这次会议上呢，还提出为了构建这个中非命运共同体，习近平主席提出来要把"一带一路"建设与非盟的2063年议程和那个联合国的2030年议程以及非洲各国的发展战略有效的对接起来。所以我们知道"一带一路"的它的目的呢，要实现五通。那么随着"一带一路"在非洲的推进呢，必然会促进中国对非投资的大量增长。那么现在呢，截止到2019年，中国已经有3600多家企业呢，在52个非洲国家地区进行投资。那么投资的直接存量呢，已经超过了490亿美元，是20年前的100倍。所以现在呢，非洲呢已经成为中国一个重要的投资目的地。那么在对非的投资过程当中呢，我们国家的对非投资，可以看一下，对非投资呢主要集中在下列一些非洲国家。这是我根据商务部的一个统计，就是前10个接收中国投资最多的非洲国家。那么这些国家呢，我们看接收中国的投资呢是比较多。那么我们中国在非洲的投资行业呢，主要分布在下列行业特别第一位呢是建筑业第二类呢就是采矿业，包括矿产和石油领域的，然后第三类呢是建筑业。那么从这两类的那个投资的分布的国别和投资分布的行业来看呢，我们中国在非洲的投资呢极容易引起投资争议。因为刚才呢10个吸收中国最多的那前10个非洲国家呢，也是在国际上最容易引起投资争议的国家我是根据那个国际投资争端解决中心的一个统计的一个数据。那么截止到2017年5月就是在这些被外国投资者在中心提起诉讼最多的国家呢，是包括埃及、刚果金、几内亚这些，我有一个具体的一个数据。而这个外国投资者与非洲政府之间的所涉及争议的行业呢，也主要集中在这个建筑业石油和矿产领域而我们国家的对非投资呢，又刚好集中在这些国家，又刚好集中在这些行业。虽然说目前还没有相关的争议提交给这个中心来进行解决，但是呢，我认为在不久的将来，那么会有很多的对非的投资争议提交到这个中心里面来实际上呢，我们中国在非的投资呢，已经产生了大量的争议因为在非洲呢，面临着很多的政治风险、法律风险还有社区文化的风险以及经济动荡的风险。很多人呢，也从不同的方面对这些风险进行过分析。那么这些不同种类的风险呢，对我们国家在非的投资呢，都产生了一定的影响所以这些投资争议呢，有的是我亲身经历过的有的呢是从报道上收集的由于时间关系，我就不再详细的讲了。那么随着新冠疫情的发生呢，我们在非的投资呢，还会引发更多的争议因为这个新冠疫情的发生呢，会产生一些相应的一些法律的问题，那么这些问题呢，会对投资呢带来相应的一些争议的产生。那么我们对非的这个投资争议有没有相应的投资争议解决途径呢？就是我们知道，国际投资争议的解决呢，一般通过双边投资条约通过这个国内投资法，通过这个投资合同3个方面的，要么是做出规定，要么做出约定 那么主要来说呢，我觉得这个双边投资条约和这个投资合同，它最终还是要取决于这个国内投资法的规定。那么结合这三者的规定，结合中非之间的双边投资条约，这个图呢显示了就是解决投资争端中心在里面提及的案件当中，它主要的依据呢就是双边投资条约，接下来就是双边投资，还有那个投资合同，最后一个呢是投资法，主要是依据这三类方式提起来的。那么结合这三类方式，结合中非之间的双边投资保护条约来看中非之间的投资争议的解决方式。我们看中非双边投资条约在数量方面呢，现在签订了34个双边投资保护条约，但生效的呢只有20个，有16个呢没有生效。没生效的这些非洲国家当中呢，实际上有的国家接受了很多中国的投资所以由于没有双边投资条约，这个对中国在非投资的保护呢是很不利的。另外，对于已经生效的这20个双边投资保护条约，因为20个当中有一个莫桑比克和卡麦隆的那个条约的原文呢一直找不到所以就依据18个生效的双边投资保护条约，我分析了一下这个条约当中规定的争议的解决方式。那么在2000年以前签订的中非双边投资保护条约呢，一般都约定了这个二元的争议解决方式，也就是说把征收赔偿额的争议和那个其他的投资争议进行区分，分别规定了不同的解决方式。而2000年以后签订的中非双边投资条约呢不再进行区分，直接规定了单一的争议解决方式。那么在2000年以前签订的那个规定的征收赔偿额争议可以接受 exceed 解决的呢只有3个国家，只有摩洛哥、埃塞俄比亚和加蓬。那其他的一般规定的其他投资争议呢都是在投资东道国法院解决。而2000年以后签订的这个8个有效的双边投资保护条约当中接受 exceed 解决的呢只有6个国家所以总的来看的话，我们在20个有效的双边投资保护条约当中呢，接受 exceed 争议解决方式的呢只有9个。所以从上面的中非双边投资条约当中的分析可以得出以下几个结论。第一个就是中非双边投资保护条约的数量比较少，因为我们现在对非投资呢已经遍布52个国家和地区，但是实际上我们有效的中非双边投资保护条约呢只有20个很多接受中国很多投资的国家呢还没有和我们签订双边投资保护条约。你像安哥拉还有的签订的没有生效，你像刚果金、乌干达、肯尼亚这些。另外，中非双边投资条约的内容比较陈旧这个有时候需要完善。还有一个就是规定的争议解决方式，主要是东道国法院的诉讼专设仲裁庭和 exceed 仲裁当然，这20个有效的双边投资保护条约当中都规定了协商的前置程序另外这些条约当中呢，接受 exceed 解决的比较少，只有9个。从这个上面的结论当中还看出一点，就是说非洲国家法院在解决中非投资争议当中呢是不可忽视的机构，因为很多条约都约定还是要通过这个非洲国家的法院来解决另外呢，就是中非双方呢对协商程序接受比较高，因为每一个条约呢都把这个协商争议解决程序呢作为一个前置程序所以考虑到非洲国家法院的状况以及考虑到这个新加坡调解公约虽然说已经生效，但是呢批准的非洲国家现在还没有还比较少所以通过这个协商前置或者是法院诉讼呢都是不利于中非投资争议的解决所以我认为目前呢还应当主要是通过仲裁的方式来解决这个中非投资争议。那么在通过仲裁的方式解决投资争议的时候，是不是可以选择通过 exceed 的方式来解决呢因为大部分投资争议呢都是通过 exceed 来解决的，并且呢也已经有很多中国投资者开始运用 exceed 来解决这个投资争议截止到目前呢 exceed 受理的中国投资者 提起来的案件呢已经有7起了啊，但是没有1起针对非洲国家的。但是我觉得就是利用 XC 的解决中非投资争议呢，还存在一些障碍，包括很多的非洲国家的人士呢也提出了这几点的意见啊。第一点呢，当然是我们国家接受这个 XC 的接受 XC 的非洲国家呢还不是很多，只有9个啊。另外呢，就是 XC 的投资争议解决程序呢，基本上是在西方发达国家进行的啊，它的仲裁员、调解员呢主要来自欧美国家，花费比较高昂。另外他们对中非的法律文化、法律传统不了解也造成对非洲国家和中国的一些投资者呢会带来一些偏见并且近年来一些非洲国家呢对 XC 的态度有所转变，开始产生抵触情绪。你看埃及、南非、肯尼亚、坦桑尼亚这2年都修改投资法，拒绝接受 XC 的仲裁的解决方式所以这个也是一个不利的一个方面。这个图显示了就是 XC 的程序当中的仲裁员、调解员呢，主要来自于欧美国家。那么，如果 XC 的不能解决的话，那么是不是有其他的方式来解决这个中非之间的投资争议呢？那么中非双方政府高层呢，实际对这个问题呢也比较重视，在中非合作论坛通过的一些行动计划当中呢，也提到中非经贸争议的解决方式。在2009年的沙漠沙伊赫行动计划当中就提出来，鼓励中非双方利用各国和地区性的仲裁机构来解决他们的争议。那么利用各国和地区的，那么是运用中国的呢，还是运用非洲的呢？这又产生了一个问题。那么在非洲仲裁的话，非洲呢，非洲现在仲裁的环境呢有所改善，主要表现在以下几个方面。第一个方面呢，就是现在有11个非洲国家，制定了现代化的仲裁立法，就是以 Untitled 那个示范法制定了本国的现代化的仲裁立法。另外呢，设立了现代化的仲裁机构还有一个呢，就是现在有39个非洲国家呢已经加入了纽约公约，这个是对他们仲裁环境呢是一个很大的改善。这个图显示了纽约公约的成员国。这个是有这个呢，另外现在非洲的一些地区性仲裁机构呢也已经开始受理了涉及中国投资者的一些投资争议。你看这个显示的是埃及开罗地区性国际商事仲裁中心在2009年、2010年受理的涉及中国投资者的争议，它的数量呢仅仅次于涉及德国投资者的争议，表明这个也有很多中国的投资者呢愿意选择非洲的地区性仲裁机构。另外这个图呢显示的2018年、2019年埃及开罗地区国际商事中心受理的涉及外国投资者的争议，那么也可以看到涉及中国的投资者的争议的数量呢也是占了很大一部分。刚才说的是在非洲进行仲裁，当然有了一定的条件。那么非洲人是不是同意选择在中国进行仲裁呢？有一个情况可以说明非洲人的态度，就是那个蒙内铁路的贷款协议。蒙内铁路的贷款协议在前年的时候，不知道被当地人通过什么方式，在当地报纸把一些条款披露出来。其中一个条款约定的争议解决条款就是说，在这个因为投资争议产生的争议呢，在中国国际经济贸易仲裁委员会进行仲裁，并且适用中国法律。那么这个条款公布之后呢，在当地引起轩然大波。他说这个蒙内铁路的工程项目在中国为什么选择在蒙内项目是在肯尼亚，为什么选择在中国进行仲裁，并且适用中国的法律？他们感觉是对他们主权的一个很大的侵犯，所以在当地引起轩然大波。这也表明什么呢？表明非洲人对这个仲裁，包括对我们的仲裁法律中的呢，也是不了解产生一种好。那么是不是可以采用一种中间的方法呢？第三种方式呢？第三种方法就是我们现在正在倡导的建立中非联合仲裁中心。中非联合仲裁中心呢，现在已经成立了中非联合仲裁中心，像北京中心、深圳中心还有这个那个上海中心。另外在非洲呢建立了内罗毕中心、肯尼亚还有约翰内斯堡中心这个可以作为以后中非解决争议的一个方式。那么最后一种方式呢，我也可以考虑中非以后呢可以考虑设立一个 CACSID 有 China Africa Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes 可以放在这个里面来进行解决。好，这就是我的发言，谢
The
谢。
floor is yours, please.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you again for this opportunity to participate in the forum, dear friends and colleagues from International Institute of Law of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and also all the other international friends. Unfortunately, I will share the screen soon. I will share it now because I have changed a little bit the presentation, so you can see it. Could I share mine, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, so today I will divide my speech in 3 parts. The first part will be a short analysis of legal and economic measures adopted by Serbian government. The second part will be analysis of legal challenges encountered by foreign investors in Serbia. And the third part will be analysis of opportunities for foreign investors during the times of COVID-19. Okay, so I will just start immediately shortly with the discussion of the good relationship between Serbia and China that has even strengthened and gotten to an even higher level during the tough times of the pandemic. Actually, Chinese government has assisted a lot Serbia during these tough times and has donated many testing kits, sent a medical team, as you can see in the picture below, and also a very important project to mention is the project of donation of the Hoya National Laboratory for the molecular detection of infectious agents, which was donated by the mining company Zijin to Serbia. And this laboratory is now doing most of the testing for COVID-19 in Serbia. So even when I was, for example, tested, I got results from this this testing lab, and it's been a great help to our medical teams. Here you can see a short description of the economic outlook of Serbia during COVID-19. In the second quarter of this year, the national GDP decreased by 9.2%. However, as I just mentioned shortly before, Serbian government has adopted a comprehensive package of emergency measures, and these measures have resolved in some way the negative economic impact of crisis. As you can see here, the projections of IMF in regards to the GDP growth are still not good. A decrease of GDP of 2.5% is predicted. Some people say it will go up to 1%, but let's see what will happen until the end of this year, because now in November, the situation is deteriorating and there have been many COVID cases in Europe and also in Serbia recently. The situation has been really tough in March, April, and May of this year during the emergency situation in Serbia. As you can see here, the overall industrial production dropped by 17% and manufacturing by 20%. And also many private companies and especially companies that were involved in foreign trade have been impacted, and foreign trade has dropped significantly, even by 26.4%. Here you can see I have divided the analysis of economic and legal measures against corona crisis in 5 types of measures. Measures of direct financial aid to private sector. The government has thought how to assist private companies, whether to assist all the companies in the same manner or whether to assist companies in specific sectors that have been impacted the most, such as the sector of hospitality or tourism, etc. And the government has decided to help everyone, all the private companies and even individuals. The second type of measure has been the tax policy measure. The third type are the financial measures, liquidity measures for the private sector. Then we have social law and labor law measures that I will talk about more in the next slide. The most important package of measures has been the economic package of measures. And what the government has done has divided this package in two parts. Package for small and medium-sized companies and the package for large companies. All the small and medium-sized companies have received a minimum wage package of euro 275 per worker for the period of May, June, and July, as well as euro 155 per worker for the period of August and September. So that is in total 5 months for all the small and medium-sized companies. And this, according to our experience, has meant a lot both to foreign investors and also to domestic private companies. Large companies have also received this economic help from the government for 5 months, so May, June, July, August, and September. However, the amount was 50% of the basic minimum net salary per worker of this large company. So this amount is multiplied by the number of employees for each company. Now I will talk about other types of measures. In regards to the tax policy measures, the payment on taxes and salaries for social contributions for the private sector has been postponed until January of 2021. This has been a very important measure. Then also many donations from the private companies have been exempt from the obligation to pay VAT. And the postponement of payment of advanced income tax in the second quarter was also adopted. I mentioned many companies had problems with the liquidity. Therefore, the government has established a development fund, which has assisted the companies which needed this support the most. And also a guarantee scheme to support the economy through banks has been adopted. This means that, for example, some of the companies, foreign investors that I have been working with have received loans from the banks, but these loans were supported for up to 80% from the National Bank of Serbia. Now, the third type of measures are the labor law measures. Basically, the newest measure is the work from home. The government is encouraging work from home for all the companies that can allow it, where the nature of work allows work from home. Obviously, it's not possible for everyone. And also, there is a recommendation that employees who are absent due to coronavirus will be paid full salaries. This is just a recommendation. The law provides only for 65% of the salary. Now, the last package of measures have been social law measures. And basically, each adult citizen has received 100 euros as the assistance from the government, and also a moratorium on dividend payments until the end of the year has been adopted, and moratorium on loan payments, all kinds of loan payments from the bank has been adopted until the October. Here you can see that this package of economic and legal measures has been very comprehensive. And in the area of West Balkans, countries which are not part of the European Union, Serbia has adopted the most comprehensive package of measures. Here you have also some countries of the European Union, such as Croatia, and the percentage of measures is around 11% of GDP. Now here, I will talk about the most important, this is the most important part of my speech today, legal challenges for direct investment projects in Serbia. This is based on my own experience and also on this experience of foreign investors. First of all, in regards to the large construction projects, it is important to mention that Serbia has not adopted any measures that would impede or stop the construction work. On the contrary, the Ministry of Construction has encouraged the progress of construction works. However, many foreign investors have still encountered the delay of construction works. And from the legal point of view, it is very interesting. And I also see that the next topic will be about this. Some companies have defined this delay through the definition of force majeure. However, the Serbian courts have still not made a decision in this regard, and each case shall be analyzed on a separate basis, case by case basis. So we will see what will happen in this regard in the future. There have been some also successful construction works which have been completed on time. So even though most of the construction projects were delayed, some are going to be completed now, for example, in December and January of next year. The second problem that many foreign investors have encountered is the extension of all the government procedures for obtaining of necessary licenses, for example, for the construction and production facilities such as gas connection, electricity, water, internet, and so on. It is mostly due to the fact that many government sectors have been closed in March, April, and May. The third legal challenge that is important to mention is the unreliability of supply chain and delay in procurement, especially in procurement of materials and machines from other countries such as China, but also European Union. For example, Italy has been affected a lot by COVID-19. The fourth case is unforeseeable shortages in personnel caused by the epidemic. Many workers have been prevented from coming to work. Maybe they were sick or they were in isolation. So this has impacted many foreign investors. The fifth issue is the closure of borders from March 15th to May 6th during the state of emergency. However, even after the declaration, even after the state of emergency has been abolished, many companies have still decided to postpone the arrival of their employees to Serbia due to the reduced number of flights and difficulties flying, so on. The sixth topic is the impact of health and safety measures on performance of work of foreign investors. And here, many foreign investors have had to employ obligatory measures of COVID-19 testing, compulsory wear of masks inside the offices, social distancing, and this has increased their costs and decreased the efficiency of work. The seventh legal challenge is the uncertainty regarding the further phases of investment due to unstable economic trends. We have had some cases where the investors and the government are talking about modifying the agreement regarding the total amount of investment, the total number of employees. Investors are thinking whether to proceed with the second phase, third phase of investment. And this is some topic that we will need to monitor in the future. As I mentioned, the number 8 is the decreased productivity due to altered working conditions. Even though many employees work from home, this has impacted some companies, especially in the manufacturing sector, because, for example, the rotating schedules are not possible, and so on. So many efficiency problems. As I mentioned, foreign investors have reported the decreases in revenues in comparison to the last year. And they were looking for financing. Government has helped a lot in these regards. However, still many companies have problems in this regard. Also, there is an increased number of potential lawsuits in regards to the execution of contracts as a result of the pandemic.
You still have 1 minute.
Okay, I will just go briefly. I would like to point out that the most important opportunities that the foreign direct investments will have are the acquisition of shares in the companies affected by the crisis, acquiring of state-owned companies, then the new government policies which will facilitate the communication with foreign investors have been implemented, such as online tools, e-platforms, video conferencing, use of drones. Then the new areas of investment are the investment in healthcare, agriculture, IT, research and development.